You do have to wonder, did everybody voting in the top 25 even get to watch the second half of that game?
Happy Tuesday and welcome into the PHNX Sun Devils show presented by Branded Bills. Make sure you head to brandedbills.com and use code BBPHNX for 15% off your first order. I'm Anthony Chotre, that guy right there. That is the hall monitor, also known as Eric Ruby. That's right. That howling is the Deli Man. He is back from his journey across state lines. Welcome back, Deli Man.
Thank you. I'm sorry I left you guys. I am the reason for the letdown.
It's okay. We've got you from Mississippi State.
You got me for the rest of the season.
Love it.
Though, so before we get into ASU talk, I'm just going to derail us right now.
Yeah, I mean, that's valid.
Shout out to my cousin who made his first start as a collegiate football player. Was the Big Sky Player of the Week. Offensive Player of the Week.
Ty Diefenbach.
Yep. The 3 touchdowns, 300 all-purpose yards. Great game from him. Unfortunately, so they're in the Big Sky, so they play NAU at NAU this year. That game,
it's for all the marbles.
West Virginia is the same weekend.
Oh,
I know. Wish I could go. So that's unfortunate. So I will be we'll be missing that game. No, I'm kidding. I'll be here for that. But yeah, shout out my cousin Ty.
Yeah, Emily, Ben, B's in here. Make sure you hit that like button, you hit the subscribe button, and you drop a 5-star review wherever you get your podcast. We've got some sound from Kenny Dillingham and QB1 Sam Leavitt on the preparation for Mississippi State. If you're on social, you saw the Cowbells in full action today at ASU practice. We will get into everything that they had to say, what we saw at practice today. But first and foremost, Arizona State falling from number 11 to number 12 in the latest AP Top 25 poll. Not the only Big 12 team to fall. Some other teams took some hits. Texas Tech also fell a spot despite winning their game handedly. Kansas State, I think rightfully so, fell out of the AP Top 25. Utah cracked the top 25 for the first time this season with Devin Dampier at quarterback. Some other Big 12 teams receiving votes include BYU. Kansas State did, in fact, receive some votes despite the way that they've played the last couple of weeks. TCU, after absolutely spoiling Bill Belichick's debut at UNC, they received some votes as well. And then, of course, the Iowa State Cyclones sitting pretty at number 16. But Rubus, ASU at number 12, falling a spot despite a 19-point victory.
I'm conflicted about this one, and I know you're not too thrilled about it, and I know both of us said on the post-game show that we expected ASU to be in the top 10 if they started off the season 1-0, especially because there were a couple top 10 teams that ended up losing. That being said, in the moment after that game, there was a lot of doom and gloom, and there was a lot of disappointment, right? And I think that disappointment was properly shared on this program, and that with South Carolina's win, Illinois' win, I guess I understand it. Do I think it's fair? Nah, not really, but it's dropping one. You didn't have a clean week one. Big opportunity ahead of you. I find it hard to get viscerally upset about this.
Yeah, I'm not viscerally upset at this by any means. I think when we are talking about Arizona State falling in the rankings.
Sorry, guys.
So
we're just Ruby Cam.
I think
looking
again,
at the AP Top 25.
And before I guess we get into the rankings, your point that after the game it did feel pretty doomy and gloomy, just because the expectations were so high in that game, right? Everybody, us included, expected Arizona State to go out there and absolutely bludgeon in theory, worst team in NAU. Now, NAU is a much better program and a better team than they've been in previous years. That's no excuse for Arizona State, I think, to have played the way that they did, specifically when we're talking about a lot of the mental errors, the 12 penalty situation. With that said, falling a spot and still having 3 teams that are in the top 10 that are 0-1 doesn't sit well with me. I don't necessarily think that Arizona State should have maybe moved up. I think logistically, like just from a numbers perspective, if you have 4 top 10 teams lose and you're sitting at number 11 and you win by nearly 20 points and you make 40 points, almost 40 points, look pretty bad on the scoreboard, in theory, you should probably stay put at number 11. I thought there was a world where they crept up to probably number 10. I think you look at the teams that fell despite losing. You've had Texas go from 1 to 7. I'm not saying that ASU should have been ranked over Texas by any means. With that said, Arch Manning and the Texas Longhorns looked like trash offensively. I get they played Ohio State. I get they came into the year at number 1. Regardless, they did not look like the number 7 team in the country. Notre Dame, they fell from 6 to 9 after playing against Miami, who was sitting at number 10 in the country. I'm not sure Notre Dame still deserves to be in the top 10. You had Bama lose. Bama completely fell from 8 to number 21 in the top 25. And then you have a team in Clemson that I want to say was, number 4 in those first rankings. 4. They lost to LSU, and they fall 4 spots to number 8. So a lot of the teams that ended up still losing in the top 10 found themselves still within that top 10. That doesn't necessarily sit great with me. Again, at the end of the day, ASU won their football game. They scored nearly 40 points. It just logistically feels like another Big 12 kind of slap in the face. And I get it. I'm not saying ASU deserves to be a top 10 team based off their performance. That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying based off of what happened in that first week, logistically, there is not really a reason why ASU should have dropped the spot. After starting the year 1-0, you had maybe the best wide receiver performance in the Power 4 in week 1 from Jordan Tyson with 12 catches, $141, and 2 touchdowns. Sam Leavitt did Sam Leavitt things. And at the end of the day, like ESPN not being able to get their act together in the second half of that ball game, I think really did probably skew some of the votes.
I don't know. I mean, they didn't play great in the second half. I mean, there were some highlight plays. Listen, at the end of the day, we both said it. This team did not play like the number 11 team in the country on Saturday. No, that's a point blank period fact. Now, we'll get kind of some more final thoughts on that game and how we feel about it now. But just initially going back and watching, what happened to that game, that was very much a burden of expectations reaction about ASU. They played like the penalties sucked. They had some pressure on the offensive line they didn't love, and the secondary gave up some that they shouldn't have. Okay, that all sucked, right? They still convincingly won. There was never a moment in that game that NAU was even close to threatening to actually win. It was all just a burden of expectations. But this is kind of what I said going into this season, right? Arizona State was getting a lot of love in the offseason, which was awesome. At the end of the day, you are still a team that people do not believe in to be a perennial contender in college football. And even if it's not implicit known bias, I think there's this underlying bias of you are going to have to overachieve and overperform due to your expectations in order to get the same benefit of the doubt that all those teams that you mentioned that lost, that stayed in the top 10 are going to get. You're not going to get judged the same way that a Texas is. You're not going to get judged the same way that a Clemson is. You're not going to get judged the same way that any of these teams that have been contending in college football for the past decade plus are going to be judged by. Yeah. You're going to be graded on a curve. The same way that they were graded on a curve by the fan base, where people were disappointed in a win that was not even close over NAU. You're going to be graded on a curve nationally, as in you are not going to get the benefit of the doubt. And that's why it kind of lays this foundation to go into this weekend against a not great team in Starkville, but an SEC opponent. It will be a much bigger deal than beating NAU. And you got to go in and you got to play good, clean football and beat the brakes off of them. Yeah. Right? If you don't want to be in the situation where every single Monday or Tuesday, we're sitting in here talking about how the AP Top 25 disrespected you after a win, you got to make a statement. And that is not something that they did on Saturday. No. Do I agree with everything you said? Sure. Am I shocked, surprised, or like mad about this? I would say no.
I think, yeah, I'm not upset about it. Just getting to some of the comments in the chat. Someone in there, sorry, it's going relatively fast today.
Shout out everyone.
Yeah, shout out everybody in there. Sun Devil 1 saying, gonna need Baylor to crack the top 10. B says, not worried about the ranking too much. Will says, switch SC and Illinois. I'm all right with 12. And then B's again, we beat Mississippi State convincingly. We cracked the top 10. I'm not sure if they cracked the top 10 off a convincing win, to be honest with you, after seeing how the rankings kind of fell. Again, you got a team in Texas Tech that won 67-7, and they ended up dropping a spot in the AP Top 25. I don't care who they played. They scored 67 points. They won handedly, and they still dropped in the AP Top 25, which, again, just doesn't sit well with me in the grand scheme of things. Now, do I think ASU deserved to fall? No. Am I upset about it? No, and this is why. Because I think when you go back to last season, and I know everyone's trying to move past last year, right? We're on to the 2025 season, but I think what made last year's team so special is the fact that they had some added juice going into every single game because of that first preseason poll that had them finishing 16 of 16. For me, this is the perfect time to get that added juice. That's what ASU, I think, was lacking in that first game against NAU. It didn't feel like they were flying around offensively, defensively, with their hair on fire, looking to prove something. This team, this program, this city always has something to prove. And I think when you go into Starkville, you go into SEC country, you have a team in Mississippi State that is going to be playing teams like Georgia, Ole Miss, I believe they play LSU this season, all at home, and they opted to choose Arizona State as their blackout game. A game that is going to be an absolutely wild environment over the weekend when you have the number 12 team in the country coming to town. And Arizona State now has some juice. Guess what? ASU has only ever won one SEC game in the history of the program, and it was last year at home against this Mississippi State team. It's a very similar team. Yes, there are a lot of new players. Guess what? Same coach, same quarterback, defensively, a lot of the same schemes. Now you're at their place. You fell. You won. The game was never in doubt, like Ruby said. You won by nearly 20 points. NAU scored a garbage time touchdown. You made almost 40 points look pretty bad offensively, and they still decided to kick you down one spot. You got a chip on your shoulder now. They don't believe in you. They don't think you're a good team. They don't think you are worthy of moving up despite 4 teams in front of you losing. There's a clear line in the sand that Arizona State, yeah, you've got Sam Leavitt. Yeah, you got Kenny Dillingham. Yeah, you're returning a bunch of the defense. Yeah, you can still win the football game. But at the end of the day, we don't see you. We don't view you as a top 10 team. You know how you switch that narrative? You go into a place that Kenny Dillingham hasn't ever coached in. You go to a place in SEC country that, despite it being a middle of the pack to lower of the pack team in the Bulldogs, they're going to show up and they're going to show out. Those cowbells are going to be going from the start of that game to the end of that game. And you need to go in there and you need to show them what a top 12 team in the country looks like. No more mental errors, 12 penalties, taking away touchdowns, taking out chunk plays, no more miscues on defense, no more holes in zones, no more lapses in coaching. You have to go out there and you have to beat the Bulldogs badly. And you have to do it. And you have to go back to the drawing board in week 3 against Texas State and act like whatever happens in that Mississippi State game was just another day at the office.
Yeah. Listen, even more so than the external motivation, there should be heaps of internal motivation from this team. They did not play up to their own standards. We'll hear from Sam Leavitt later today about how he feels like he could have played better, and he certainly could. I do think that when you go back and watch his game, he had a couple bad mistakes. Other than that, I mean, he played really well, especially for the situation he's being put in. Also, I think from the AP Top 25, this also comes from a point of not respecting Arizona State's opponent the same way that they didn't respect Texas Tech's opponent. Not that that makes it right, but I think it's true. Because if you look at the coaches poll, do you know what they're ranked in the coaches poll?
They moved up.
They moved up. They moved up to 10. And I think that when you look at NAU as an opponent, and I was guilty of this even leading up to it, you think there's no reason ASU shouldn't win 60-0. right? Because it's Northern Arizona University. That's one hell of a football team they have there. Again, they shouldn't compete. And to be honest with you, they didn't. In the moment, it was the burden of expectations that it felt closer than it actually was. That's a hell of a football team. That is a competitive football team. And that is a very well-coached football team.
Absolutely.
And I think the coaches who understand that and who are able to watch that respected that win for Arizona State, while understanding that they had a lot of room to get better, which they do. And that's where all, if not most, of their motivation should lie, is the fact that they didn't play up to the standards of a Big 12 championship team, and they know that internally. Kenny says the expectations aren't real. For us, for people watching, for the coverage of this team, expectations are real.
They are.
The number next to your name is real, right? For this team, what's real is the results. And I was thinking about this as well to kind of put a bow on the rankings is all last season, Arizona State kept winning and we kept on saying, well, they didn't play a perfect game. Well, they could have played better. And they did. They consistently improved until they got to the biggest moment. And it was like, okay, that was the first real complete game that they played against Iowa State, to be honest with you. It might be a similar way where this is the type of team that works out its kinks in the moment and as it goes. And I think as long as they continue to win, that's the most important thing. 11-12 or 11-10 on August or September, like that doesn't matter. It really doesn't matter. No. What happens is 1-0, 2-0, 3-0, 4-0, 5-0, 6-0, and continuing that. That is what actually matters.
Yeah. Lions Den 1984 in the chat. NAU was well coached. Kenny, of course, gave the NAU coaching staff some love in his post-game press conference. Saying this feels like the Kansas State game from last year leading up to this ASU Mississippi State game. Let's go ahead and put a quick poll in the chat. I'm curious for everybody watching if you guys think that Arizona State should have dropped in the AP top 25. Just vote yes or no on that one. And we will definitely get to the results here in just a bit. But again, last thing before we hit that first break, I think at the end of the day, and I said this to you after the fact, kind of on the same note and the same token of like ASU didn't play their best game, right? But you go back to last year, like you said, they didn't play a complete game or a great game really until you get to the Arizona game. Right before that Iowa State game, and they bludgeoned the Wildcats from the start of that one to the end. It is a new year, say what you want, but after the game, I told you, I was like, they made 38 points look pretty bad. Like, they didn't overall, like, if you watch that game start to finish and just solely removed the touchdowns that Arizona State scored, like, you'd be like, how'd they get 38 points? This is an explosive offense this year. Not what they had a year ago where it was methodical and it was, we're going to beat you, death by a million cuts, and then Scadaboo is going to find his way into the end zone. Getting back to that this week, they need to control the game. And I think that's something that they can do now moving forward with this offense for the entirety of 2025, is they have the ability to not only beat you the way that they did last year where it's, we're going to run the ball, but now they have an explosive weapon. They have somebody in Jordan Tyson that can take the top off and go for a $141 relatively easy with still having 5 catches out there like on targets that he should have grabbed, right? Like ultimately at the end of the day, this is an Arizona State team that they're not going to be perfect this week against Mississippi State. And if they are perfect, I'm going to be honest, I think that's a problem. You should not peak week 2. Was it a pretty game week 1? No. Do I expect them to improve week 2? Absolutely. Is it going to be perfect week 2? No. But no top 10 team, no top 12 team is perfect in September. And if they are, then usually they've peaked way too early in the season. And Arizona State last year, like you said, Rubis, did not peak until the very end of the season. They got better and better every single week, not just the players, but the coaches as well. And to see where this ASU team has started now in 2025, the room for growth, I think, is really going to be exponential from week to week.
I will say, though, the only pushback I have on that, and I agree, like you do improve week over week, but you have so many returners, and especially the defense, to see it struggle as much as it did. Like, I know it's 19 points, but 19 points against an FCS team is not acceptable for a defense that we thought was going to be top in the Big 12.
In reality, it should have been 13, right? Similar to the way the Wyoming game went last year where they had their garbage time touchdown. NAU, 30 seconds left in the game, opts to call timeout, go hurry up against some of the ASU 2s just to get another touchdown. And again, you've got to stop that. Like, that's all respect to NAU. Like, they wanted to score at the end of that football game. ASU's defense needs to be better at the end there. But you remove that single touchdown, and the way that this team came out in the first drive defensively against NAU in the second half, which was a bad defensive drive, if you took away those 2 drives, we're talking about a team in NAU that didn't really do much offensively the entirety of the game. And I know that is like you're cherry picking the stats there, but that's the reality of the situation. Like, we talked about this game, not negatively, but so much as like a disappointment because of the expectations and what we thought this team was going to be. But in reality, if you watch it and remove mistake, all correctable things, by the way, like this game looks so vastly different.
Points-wise and yards-wise, I'm not looking at the numbers because things get skewed. More so what I'm looking at is the amount of times Ty Pennington was pressured. Like, that's concerning.
Sure.
It wasn't a lot. The run defense was fantastic.
Yeah, which it was last year.
Yeah.
I think there's a middle ground here. I think you could be concerned because they didn't play their best against the team that they should have been able to play their best against, and they should have been ready to come out and completely dominate. And I also think there's a middle ground of, realistically, they gave up 13 points. They gave up some chunk plays and whatnot, and they can improve. This week will be the real tester of what's going on. And I think there's a couple more things we could take away from NAU, and we're ripping here, but we do have to hit our first break. I don't know how else to say this, but do you want 50% off of weed?
Yes.
I
do, Rubus.
Zenleaf is the place to be because Zenleaf said, okay, well then here you go. Listen, for a limited time, use promo code ZENPHNX for 50% off.
That's pretty ridiculous.
50% off. Look, I can tell you that they're your go-to cannabis spot around the valley. Flowers, vapes, edibles, and more. Chandler, Gilbert, North Phoenix, and more. Listen, I don't even need to tell you about anything else. 50% off of weed. That's the entire
advantage.
This is insane. Look at me here. Look at me. This is insane from Zenleaf. You don't get this anywhere. Zen PHNX for 50% off just for listening to this annoying guy speak. That's
all you got to do?
So the next time you're pre-gaming, post-gaming, watching the show, whatever it is, go to Zenleaf, use code ZENPHNX, and don't forget, for a limited time only, use promo code ZENPHNX to get you 50% off a one-time purchase. Zenleaf, great weed, great service every time.
I've heard of pre-gaming, but I love the fact that we're going to start using post-gaming as a verb from now on. Look, you've got your pre-game, you've got your post-game, but what are you wearing to the actual function? Don't look any further than our friends over at Rally House. You can go on their website. If you're a Valley sports fan, if you love the Sun Devils, if you love the Cardinals, if you love the Suns, the Diamondbacks, etc., well, Rally House, they've got you covered on gear for those games, for the parties, or just to lounge at home. Literally, go to the website, type in Arizona State. And I'm not kidding you here. Hundreds of pages filled with Arizona State merch, memorabilia, stuff that you can have to boost your fandom at your spot. Take it to the games. It's an absolute blast with Rally House. Make sure you find your local Rally House location and shop their entire product assortment online at rallyhouse.com today. Also, want to let everybody know, if you missed the PHNX Cardinals residency, well, it's okay because we've got another great event going on. And I say we, but in reality, it's the PHNX Cardinals host September 12th at 4:30, a special live PHNX Cardinals show over at Rally House. Going to be in the West Valley at their Glendale location, just a stone's throw from State Farm Stadium. Of course, 2 days before the Cards' first home game of the year. Make sure you go see Bo and Johnny in person. Plus, going to get your chance to win with on-site giveaways, the best duo in Arizona sports. It's PHNX Cardinals and Rally House. Hit the like button.
Hit that donate button.
Hit the donate button.
We're doing Big Brothers Big Sisters month here across all of ALLCITY. We are trying to raise $50,000. And this is a huge opportunity for this community. We know that the Sun Devil community loves to do good. This is a great chance to do so this entire month. Help us get to $50,000. Please Just
Please.
hit that
Don't
donate
do it
button.
for us.
Do it for the kids.
Do it for the kids.
Do it for the kids.
Alex in the chat, unpopular opinion. I like that we went ugly. I know we want to dominate every game, but we are fun to watch every single minute of each quarter. It's the best ride in the park.
Didn't have a lot of fun.
You didn't have a lot of fun?
No.
Did you not have a lot of fun because you couldn't see the ride?
No. I rewatched the highlights twice also, and there were definitely a lot of highs, but overall, I did not have fun watching the game.
There were some head shaking moments, for sure.
Yeah.
For sure.
Watching the offense get stifled, like drive after drive in that stretch from the second quarter to third quarter was like one of the worst things I've ever seen.
It was unfortunate, and I think, again, we had talked a little bit, I think, on the post-game show and leading up to it, just based off of like what NAU does schematically really, really was a tough task for Ben Coleman his first game at center, right? Everything that you have to do as an offensive lineman, specifically the quarterback of the offensive line, as a center, your very first game at that position, at this level, regardless of you being a veteran offensive lineman, playing guard, playing tackle, like what NAU threw at Ben Coleman specifically, I think really, really resulted in what you saw offensively. There are definitely practices where the offense looks like it's on fire, and there's practices where the offense looks relatively sloppy for the most part, outside of Sam Leavitt and Jordan Tyson doing what they do. But I think because of maybe the miscommunication or all the looks that Ben was seeing so often in that game, and they were changing it up so much, it was difficult for him to get a read. And if it was difficult for him, it was difficult for him to communicate with the rest of that offensive line, which, if you remember every moment of that game, there were points in that game where Josh Atkins went down. There were points in that game where Ben Coleman went down. There were points in that game where Max Ahanichor went down. So not only do you have the miscommunication, not only do you have everything that Ben's already juggling, but then you throw in the fact that, okay, your left tackle's out for a few plays or a drive. Your right tackle's out for a few plays and a drive. Oh, the center's out for a few plays and a drive. And that's not making excuses. Like, they should have been better. They should have been more prepared. Part of that falls on the offensive line. Part of that falls on the coaches, which I think everybody will be better against Mississippi State. But that really was a perfect storm, I think, for NAU. And that was their singular key to victory, was they had to confuse Ben from the start of that game to the end of that game so that they could get to Sam, really keep him uncomfortable. And all credit to Sam for being able to be uncomfortable, and then at that point just use his legs and then find zero on the outside to win the game. Like, I think that's something that is not just going to be an NAU thing, but I think you're going to see it again. Maybe not against Mississippi State, but there are going to be games where Arizona State doesn't look great, but just because you have Sam Leavitt and Jordan Tyson, that is going to be enough to win you some games.
Yeah, you don't want that.
I'm not saying you want it,
right?
But they're good enough to just win games.
Sure.
Off of those two. Again,
Agreed.
They scored 38 points, and offensively, it was like a head scratcher.
Sure. I think that, like, yes, you're right. Also, again, we're grading this team on a curve now because they have bigger expectations than just being a good team, right? Great teams don't just rely on two players. They have the cream of the crop, right? But what makes these top 10 teams? It's the fact that they have depth and they have all these other weapons, and that's what we were touting the entire offseason, was the fact that this offense has so many more weapons this year that can spread it out. Jaron Hamilton gets one snap. Jalen Moss is practically not involved, right? Obviously, Raleek had a great game, extremely high highs, and a big play that was called back that would have given him well over 100 all-purpose yards, right? But it's like Kyson Brown had a good game. You didn't get a great game from Kanye Udo, right?
I mean, you didn't really give him the ball.
Right, you didn't give him the ball. You didn't see a lot from Shaman. You didn't see a lot from Kamari, right? You had a big play from Malik, but Malik had more penalties than he had big moments, right? So it's tough because we sit here and we're talking about this team for 7 months, having this diversification of weapons in the post-Camp Scadaboo era, and we're walking away from week one, a week that you should have been looking to use, and we expected them to use a lot of other weapons, and said it was the Jordan Tyson and Sam Leavitt show.
Yeah.
And at the end of the day, it's going to be the Jordan Tyson and Sam Leavitt show more often than not, but the love is going to have to be spread out a little bit more when you play some of these top tier teams that you're expecting to come across at the end of the season. But there is a long way to figure that out, and I think at the end of the day, it was week one. Sam was pressured a lot. That was the biggest problem on the offense, was that he was pressured a ton, and you have a release valve.
You guys know how many carries there were to go around that were not Sam Leavitt carries?
15?
No, there was less than that, I think. I think Raleek got maybe 6. Kyson got maybe 7, and Kanye got 2.
So Raleek only got 5, so 14.
14 carries. Yeah, and Kenny said that yesterday.
It was a weird game plan.
Well, Kenny said yesterday, and he said a couple things. I want to make a point about what you said about getting more guys involved. First off, with the lack of running, he said on Monday at his weekly availability that he told Marcus he wanted to throw the football around. He wanted to be very aggressive in this game. And you saw that with Sam throwing the ball as many times as he did. Literally, 39?
I think it was 39
times in that game. So I think you saw that, and then it was tough to really get in a different flow of the game to try and give Kyson, Raleek, and Kanye a bunch of carries after that, right? So I think you will see Arizona State a little bit more focused on running the football. I think you should see a little bit more Raleek Brown, Kyson Brown, maybe even a little bit more Kanye as well, even though going into the year, we kind of said that Kanye was going to be mainly a short yardage, goal line type of back, at least this year, because of what you have in Kyson and Raleek. And you saw both of those guys, when they did have opportunities, they looked special in their own right. Now, as it relates to what you said about getting guys involved in the offense, Jaron Hamilton only playing 1 snap, Jalen Moss not getting a catch.
Only 2 wideouts catching the ball.
Yeah. He said because of, again, the way that NAU's defense played schematically, right? Like they ran a lot of cover 0. They weren't doing anything to really take Jordan Tyson out of the ball game. Kenny said, like, honestly, he understands it. He understands a little bit of the frustration of not getting guys like a Shaman or Jaron or Jalen involved in the game. But kind of on the flip side of that, is it almost kind of stupid if NAU's not going to do anything to take Jordan Tyson out of the ball game to throw him the ball as many times as he did?
Oh, no, absolutely not. I think, but also you and I were sitting up there, and especially I think this was something that you had pointed out, that there was sometimes that the play calling felt like it didn't make sense. And so it's like if they were going to try some things out and they knew they were going to win against NAU, it's like, okay, you take your lumps this game and you move on from it, right? But again, this is also a team that went for it on 4th down a couple of times, had a fake punt, right? So it's not like they were just going to test some things out to be conservative. Like they wanted to put up 50. They wanted to put up 60. And they didn't.
Low key, I think, and I'm being like so dead ass about this, I think the coaches just overthought it, bro. I think they legit just overthought what the strategy of this game was the entire time.
So what you said about like if they're not going to do anything with Jordan Tyson, just throw the ball to Jordan Tyson. It's that easy. Sure.
17 targets.
Yeah, but that's crazy. But if you look at the running backs yards per carry, wouldn't you think the same thing? Kyson Brown 10.4, Raleek Brown 7.6, Kanye doing 9.5. Like run the damn ball.
And that first possession too. That first possession, there was the Kyson truck, and then it was a Raleek run, and then there was a Raleek spin move. Like that first possession that you scored on was powered by running backs.
Yeah.
Right? So it wasn't until like a possession or two later that it was this huge play to Jordan Tyson, which again, Sam had some honestly incredible throws. He had some bad ones, had a bad interception, but dude, some of the balls that he was throwing were insane to Jordan Tyson. Like, there's a balance in everything. Arizona State, welcome to being a top 15 team in the nation. Welcome to being a borderline top 10 team in the nation. Welcome to having Big 12 championship expectations. Nobody's ever going to be satisfied with your performance unless you completely dominate. Like, Sam Leavitt had 4 touchdowns and over 300 all-purpose yards. Jordan Tyson almost had $150 through the air and 2 touchdowns, right? It was not even close against NAU, and the overall vibe is disappointment. Welcome to being one of the best teams in the country, where you're going to get nitpicked every single step of the way. That's just what's going to happen this entire season.
One thing that tells you exactly where this team is and what college football is, how fast you can go from the first drive to the end of the game. I got a text from one of my buddies saying, quote, "We're a problem," because of that first drive. And you know what? I agreed. I was
at the end of it.
And I'm not a person to look at a scripted drive and be like, okay, that was disgusting. But just seeing how good Kyson looked, and again, I know who it was against, but still, and seeing and then the first defensive possession, it was like, oh my God, like this is scary. And to the end of the game where I'm like, 4 glasses of wine deep. I'm like, this team's horrible.
We suck.
Well, dude, and I think Alex had said it in the chat about Raleek, saying a few times Raleek touched the ball, he looked great. I was telling you in the press box, dude, like he was so damn explosive.
He had a hurdle?
Everything that he does when he touches the ball it just makes life miserable for defenses because you can't, like, you're not going to put a corner on him. You're just not going to you're not going to waste a defensive back on a running back out of the backfield unless you have the utmost respect for Raleek, which I think by the time we get to the end of the year, you're going to, at the very least, have to see safeties in coverage of them because linebackers can't do it. They cannot guard him in coverage, and you didn't see enough of Raleek actually in the passing game. Obviously, he had the screen that was taken back, the 75-yard touchdown. But even when he was running the football, which is something that I really tried to emphasize as we were getting to fall camp, when people were saying Raleek is too small, Raleek is this, like, Raleek was doing these things in practice. Raleek was lowering his shoulder and running through players. Raleek had the filthiest spin move I've seen in 12 months. Right? Granted, I know there hasn't been a lot of football, but still, Raleek looked special. He was hurdling people. You could not get a hand on him. And if you did, he was breaking tackles in a different way than Cam was doing last year, right? He was doing it based off of just sheer quickness and agility and his cuts. Seth gets it. Raleek was as good as advertised. He's somebody that needs to have the football in his hands more often. And I know we'll talk Mississippi State here in just a little bit, but we had a bet at the start of the year that if Raleek housed the starting kickoff, we would have gotten eyebrow slits, right? It
was close.
I know it wasn't the starting kickoff, but dude, he almost took that punt back the entire way off his first touch.
I texted these two and I said, if he would have scored that, we're recounting that. And Totri goes, I say yes. I say we would have. I think we would have too. That he was gone if he doesn't trip.
Yeah, and he was mad too. And here's also the thing.
I got a text saying he was sniped in the stands.
Here's also the thing though, is with Raleek, and I know that we want to give Raleek the ball. Like, this is not a guy that has played a ton of football over the last couple of years. I don't know if you want to waste a lion's share of carries and touches against NAU, right? And he still got, again, we're talking 175-yard play taken back, and this guy had probably 140 all-purpose yards against NAU on just a couple of plays.
Yeah.
Right? Like, he was completely effective. I'm not saying you don't feed him the ball against Mississippi State, but they're probably going to try to ease him into this season. He's gained 20 pounds. His body is different. You don't just want to walk in and say, hey, you're our new Cam Scadaboo. Boom. Plus, you have Jordan Tyson, you have Kyson Brown, you have Kanye Udo, right? Like, again, there are options, and I think that there are going to be different heroes each week, but Raleek Brown's going to be a constant with this team.
We keep yapping, bro. Like, we got to take more breaks.
I know, yapping. And that's what I'm going to say is I also like what Everett said about how blessed are we to be complaining about like a top 25 team or nitpicking.
Raleek was a borderline 5-star. Like, in people like. Guys,
he's playing wideout at USC.
Yeah,
and transferred here because he wanted to play running back.
We'll talk more Raleek Brown after this break.
Sorry, I almost made us yap even more.
Just the yapping kings. Listen, go watch Raleek Brown in person and get your tickets on Game Time, because there is no better place to get your tickets. I'm always trying to go to live shows, live sporting events, comedy shows. I'm just that type of guy.
You're that guy, man.
I like doing things. And so does my wife. And it's funny because we were talking about going to a concert later this month, and she goes, you know what, Eric? Let's just wait to get tickets because it's going to be cheaper on Game Time the longer that you wait. Words out of her mouth. I am not making this up. She can justify and she can fact check this.
She gets it.
My wife.
My wife. Listen, Game Time is the best place to get your deals. Plus, Game Time Picks is the best. You get all-inclusive pricing. You get a view from your seat, and you know exactly what you're going to get, which is the lowest price. They guarantee it, or they'll credit you 110% of the difference. And I've tried, and I cannot find lower prices than Game Time. So take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, use code PHNX for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply, but again, create an account, redeem code PHNX for $20 off. Tap, ticket, go. Download the Game Time app today.
Look, with all that money, these PHNX partners are going to be saving you. You got to have a place to put it. Look no further. They're Desert Financial Credit Union. Of course, if you're an Arizona sports fan, there's no better place to do your banking than Desert Financial Credit Union. Of course, Arubis's family and Desert Financial Credit Union. They're like Sam Leavitt and Jordan Tyson, man. The relationship is just next level. And you guys can have that same type of relationship with the FCU because they're here to help you with anything as it relates to finances. If you have questions about checkings or saving accounts, well, they've got you covered. What about mortgages and loans? They've got somebody for that too. Credit cards, investment options, and more. Desert Financial Credit Union, they will take care of you guys. Join a credit union that is committed to giving back to the community and sharing success with its members. Plus, they're trying to give you some money in bonuses. When you open a free checking account online, get $200 in bonuses. Get started by visiting desertfinancial.com/200.
Okay, so the poll in the chat, 58%, I believe. Sorry, hold on. 58% say yes, they should have been in the top 10. 50 or 42 say no, they
shouldn't have been in the top 10.
They shouldn't have been in the top
10.
10.
Relatively close.
I mean, it's close.
I think they should have stayed where they were.
I know they didn't, but they basically did. Like, it's not like they went from 11 to 20. It went from 11 to 12.
No, but I mean, and again, I know it's super, super early, so saying this maybe doesn't mean anything, but like, if we're talking at the end of the year, right? You move a spot, and I get 11 to 12 is different than 12 to 13, but you drop 12 to 13, you're out of the college football playoff, right?
But
like one spot,
week 2.
But at the end of the day, it matters, right? Because if say you're number 11 this week, going into Mississippi State, you beat the brakes off Mississippi State, then maybe you can make an argument for going top 10. Because let's be honest, how many Big Ten, everything you see in the top 10, everything above Arizona State is SEC, Big Ten minus Clemson and Notre Dame.
Sure.
Everything else is those two conferences, which they're going to eat each other alive. I don't think South Carolina is going to be a top 10 team by the end of the year. I don't believe in Illinois, which is probably still going to be a middle-of-the-pack Big Ten team when we're talking about Ohio State and Oregon in that conference. Like LSU, Georgia, I'm not a believer in Miami. Like, there is so much still to be decided as the season goes on, but having that one spot may not seem like a lot now, but when we're in the middle of the season and you get a big win against a TCU and it doesn't move you at all or whatever because all of these other teams win their games, yeah, we're going to come back to the week 1, week 2 switch up where it's like, hey, ASU still almost won by 20. They never were at a point where they were going to lose this game. Their starting wide receiver had the best wide receiver performance of a power 4 wideout. Their quarterback, if you remove the dumbest stat in college football where you lose stats or you lose rushing yards because of a sack, he would have had topped over 100 on the ground. Like, we're talking about a team that dropped for what? Because they had 12 penalties? That's really why we dropped them?
I mean, yes. But, and if that's fair or not, whatever, right? I also, I get what you're saying. Also, though, Florida State was unranked, and now they're in the top 20, right? They're 14. You can make big jumps. And you're saying, you say about peaking too early, it's like, okay, if they were in the top, what's more important, them being in the top 10 now or the top 10 at the end of the season, right?
100%.
If there wasn't this whole runway with actual, Big 12 SEC teams ahead of you to play and prove yourself against, they have plenty of opportunity to make sure that it's a surefire way that they make the college football playoffs, which they're going to probably have to do by winning this conference, because the way that this conference has shaken out, I don't think they're going to get 2 playoff bids.
No, probably not.
So you're going to have to win the conference either way. So what happens right now, and if you get dropped down to 12, isn't the biggest deal in the world. I do want to kind of put a bow on the Raleigh conversation. I know we'll have sound from Kenny and Sam here in a second. Jake Garcia of 12 Sports out at practice with you today talked to Raleigh Brown. Raleigh told him that he could handle 20 carries a game if needed, but said the coaches are easing him back in after so much missed time. Yeah. So If Raleigh continues to do what he does with the touches that he gets, there's no reason he's not going to be RB1 and wide receiver 2, by the midpoint of this season. That's the type of talent level that you got out of that guy. And again, there's so much extra that this team can add on. We talk about last season, them consistently getting better. It's like, well, they haven't put together a complete game, right? You talk about these weapons in Shaman and Jaron and Jalen and Raleigh and Kyson and Kanye, and it's like, okay, what if they do get more involved, right? On defense, the secondary left some to be desired, and the defensive line needed to get better pressure on the quarterback. They still made big plays, right? Elijah O'Neal still had 3 sacks, right? They still had, Anthony Cooper with the thick 6 part 2, right?
Which wasn't a 6, though, but you got the pick.
I know, but it was the
thick pick.
It was the thick pick. The pick with 2 C's. But, you had these moments, and the defensive thing that Shane mentioned earlier, and I mentioned this on the show, overall disappointing. The fact that they were put in some pretty serious situations, but momentum shifting situations, and they got the stop a lot of the times. They held. Right? They held. They didn't give up a ton of points, until the second unit came in. These are things that if in week 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and beyond, they're cleaned up and they're fine, this isn't going to matter.
No.
The only reason that this game will ever matter is if these themes are consistent over the next couple of weeks.
Well,
that's
and
it.
I think that's the perfect segue to what Kenny Dillingham had to say at practice today about everything that happened in that game against Northern Arizona University is correctable.
The guys, everything that happened in the game is correctable, it's fixable, and that's what you want. You want to win football games when you have a lot of things to correct. And I think they've had a really good mindset to go back to work this week and try to play our best football. That's the mission every single week. The mission is to play our best football. Hopefully the result is winning, but the mission and the goal is to play our best football. And that's how I judge football games, is one, winning is how you feel, but really it's, do we play our best football, right? That's how I rule it from my perspective.
And that is the thing where it's like you leave week 1 and you say, okay, what was ASU's biggest obstacle? Well, it was what ASU did for themselves.
Yeah, it was this.
Especially penalty. It was decision making, right? And I think there was some game planning and coaching that needed to be cleaned up as well. We're gonna dog on the players a lot, but even Kenny said it. Like Kenny said, he got out coached. I think that the play calling, there was some points where it was questionable, and that is what it is, right? Just don't make it a consistent problem.
Yeah.
Also, what he mentioned is kind of what I said earlier, where it's not about going from 11 to 12. It's about this team knowing internally that they can be better. And that is why I'm confident. Like, people are confusing the disappointment in week 1 with a lack of confidence in this team. I have no lack of confidence in this team. None at all.
Yeah.
They're going to correct this.
I still think they're 3-0 going into conference play.
Without a doubt. I think that they're still 11-1, 12-0 is on the table, despite them having a tough schedule this year with how a couple things have shaken out in the Big 12. Like, I have lost no faith in this team after week 1.
I would be very concerned with our friendship and our partnership if you were concerned after a week 1 near 20-point victory.
Well, and that's I think people are confusing that.
Yeah.
And I think even ASU fans with some PTSD are internally confusing
That's what it is.
that.
I don't even think it's confusing. I think it's more so like it's just the hurt Arizona State
and I
Valley
get it.
sports fan.
We talked about this all
Kenny's
off
talked
season.
about it, right? Yeah,
right.
It's you're not beating what you did last year. You're chasing 50 years of history of Arizona State, quote unquote, disappoints, right? So any way that you can spin it of, that week 1 game, it was disappointing, right? Like,
everybody's waiting for them to fall off.
Every single person is waiting for the moment to where you can look and you could say, oh, we told you this is just Arizona State. They're cursed, right? But they will figure it out. Kenny says everything's correctable. And, Sam, I think for the most part, had a relatively solid game. Again, you remove the dumbest sport in college football where you take away rush yards for a sack. By far the dumbest rule in college sports, point blank period, not just football. But you remove that. You remove the one INT that was a silly, just like, again, lapse in judgment at the end of the day. And overall, Sam had a relatively good game. We're going to get to what Sam Leavitt had to say about his performance on the other side of our final break.
New partner alert. Wee-oo. Spencer's. Welcome to the family. And man, they made a statement off the bat.
They did.
If you've seen some new things from PHNX HQ3, you see some massive TVs that are up on the wall, mounted for our viewing area that will be watching week 2 ASU Mississippi State. That is all thanks to Spencer's. And we got it at a good deal. And you know that you can support local here. It's employee owned and operated, same day, next day delivery, also available. The largest selection of in-stock appliances and Arizona's largest independent appliance dealer. But on top of all of that, you know how it goes here at PHNX. We want you to save some money. Spencer's wants you to save some money and save today using our promo codes. Use code PHNX5 for 5% off appliances, or use code PHNX10 for 10% off TVs, audio, and mattresses. Those are big purchases, so those 5 and 10% can take off a big chunk of money. It's like having a friend in the business. Visit spencerstv.com or any of their 11 Valley locations today.
Look, we've all had the moment where you're reaching around for your sunglasses and you can't find them. Did you leave them at a gas station? Did you leave them at home? Did you break them? Did you drive a jet ski at the lake and fall in and then lose your sunglasses? Well, We've all been there. I have.
That was specific.
But, well, it's happened, man. Shady Rays, they're completely changing the game. Because, look, if you lose or break your sunglasses, even on day one of having them, Shady Rays is going to send you a brand new pair. No guilt trip, just replacements. Not to mention Shady Rays. Come on, the best glasses in the game. I know we all have a pair here at PHNX. Usually we're rocking them on those PHNX Sun Devils post-game shows. They've got some polarized ones. They're all very, very durable. Make sure you go check out everything Shady Rays has to offer online. Of course, we've teamed up with Shady Rays to bring you an exclusive offer. Head to shadyrays.com and use code PHNX for, get this, 35% off polarized sunglasses. Try for yourself. The Shades rated 5 stars by over 300,000 people. Also, shout out the chat. We've had 70 strong in here pretty much from the jump. Hit that like button. Hit the subscribe button. If you're new here, you just caught us for the first time on that PHNX Sun Devils post-game show. We do this just 5, sometimes 6 days a week, just ripping Arizona State. Hopefully still like in the works of a really fun interview, hopefully tomorrow. Don't want to announce that until we've officially got it set in stone, but make sure you are here at 1 o'clock tomorrow, because that is going to be an absolute blast. Of course, we're still going to be talking Sun Devil football as well, but I do want to let chat hear what Sam Leavitt had to say after practice today about his performance against NAU.
Yeah, I didn't feel like I played the best. A lot of things I could have done better. Threw a really stupid pick. That's not part of my game. Game was kind of over at that point, and I just threw it up, and it was just dumb. I don't do stuff like that, but good stuff to learn from. I won't do that again.
I mean, if you're going to make a mistake, if you're going to make one of those errors, it's best that it happens in week 1 in a game that was never really it was never really going to be a game that was taken away from you.
And he's right. Like, that's not his game.
No.
He was not a turnover-prone quarterback last year, like, at all. And I think that, that turnover would have meant a little bit less if, like, that bomb to Malik McClain counted, right? Or if one of the 2 bombs to Malik McClain counted, because the other one,
or
Malik
the Raleek Brown
ran out of
touchdown.
bounds. The Raleek Brown, that was less on Sam, that was more Raleek, but again, it adds to his
Still
yards.
statistically,
An interception for the statistics that Sam Leavitt put up, overall, not a big deal. Bad decision. He acknowledges it's a bad decision. We watched him play an entire season of football last year, minus the Cincinnati game. It's really like, that's not him, like, at all. So I'm not worried about that really at all. I don't think it's going to be a pattern with him. So I'm not worried about Sam Leavitt. I'm not worried about Jordan Tyson. I'm not worried about Kenny Dillingham. I'm not worried about this team.
Yeah.
Like, if I'm sitting here next Tuesday and I'm talking about some of these themes persisting, I wouldn't say I'd be out on the team, but, like, I'll be a lot more concerned.
You'd definitely be a lot more concerned. I know Bees had a question about injuries in the chat. As it relates, probably the biggest one of note was Ben Coleman against NAU. He was out there today. He looks good. There's going to be no questions, I don't think, about Ben Coleman starting at center again against Mississippi State. Along the lines of some of the other injury stuff, Kenny didn't provide any update after practice today. Although if you are a PHNX diehard and you're in the diehard Discord, privy to some things off air. So maybe we can have some conversations in the diehard Discord a little bit later about some of those things at what we saw at practice, at what we didn't see at practice. So you do got to become a PHNX diehard for that. But here we are 50-something minutes in. And, of course, Mississippi State is on deck for the number 12 Arizona State Sun Devils this week. And practice looked and sounded a little different. Actually, not a little, a lot different today, because it was just all cowbells the entirety of practice. This is what Coach KD had to say about mimicking the environment that the Sun Devils are going to see in Starkville.
Yeah, I mean, when you think of Mississippi State and Starkville, it's an unbelievable college town. They got unbelievable atmosphere, right? Fans are awesome. They're all in, which is what you want, right? I've lived in a college town in Auburn. It's one of my favorite places I live. So Starkville, I've recruited Starkville. I actually lost to a recruit who was from Starkville to Coach Levy. He whooped my butt in the recruiting show. He was committed to me forever to Florida State, and Coach Levy got him to flip to him. So it's a great environment there, and we're trying to simulate that environment as much as we can. Obviously, you can't simulate their fan base and their excitement and that environment, but you can be as close as you can. So we're just trying to simulate the passion of that city and that place, and it's awesome.
listen, leave it to Kenny Dillingham to do whatever he can to simulate an environment.
Yeah.
He needs more cowbell. He needs to scream. No, I mean, this is expected, I'm sure, for you out there. That was probably not the most
very
fun.
annoying, bro.
Yeah.
Very,
I mean,
very
that's
annoying.
what it's supposed to be. It's supposed to be.
They had
annoying.
like down to the like equipment staff, people that obviously are running waters.
I saw Raleigh had
had
in his
one
hands.
at one point. Like the water staff had them ringing cowbells. It was going over the speakers the entire time. No music today.
Did they hand any to
Just
you?
cowbells? No, but the creative team also had cowbells as well, going out there just ringing cowbells. There was a point where they were in Ben Coleman's next to his helmet.
Jeez.
In like ringing the cowbell, and Sam in his post practice availability was like, that one irritated me a little. He's like, because that's just not
Gonna
realistic.
happen,
It's but for the most part, like they are really trying to mimic that environment. It's something that they've been doing for the last couple of weeks, not just the cowbells, but trying to get a sense of the humidity that you're going to see, because it is going to be a pretty muggy environment in Starkville this weekend.
What was worse, the cowbells or when Kenny played "We Are the Champions" like 15 times in a row at the start of camp?
I would say the cowbells, because the cowbells, I'm like sitting there, I can't think. The other one is just like if you play "We Are the Champions," then like that's just stuck in my head. The cowbells is just all literally from the start of practice to the end of practice over the speakers. You go into the bubble, guess what? You still have speakers in there that is just blasting
That's so
cowbells,
gross,
dude, the entire time.
That's so gross.
But it's just further example that this team is not taking Mississippi State lightly, despite it being a team that doesn't get a lot of national respect. They are returning their quarterback in Blake Shapen, who didn't have the craziest game statistically in the world against Southern Miss. But ultimately, at the end of the day, they won that game. Blake Shapen is familiar with this offense. That defense is running a lot of the same schemes that they did last year, which didn't necessarily give ASU too many fits in the first half. But you remember the second half of that game, Mississippi State really, really stormed back in that one. And you had Scat in that game. So I'm really interested to see what this offense does to try and keep up some life and some tempo in Starkville, because again, this program has only beaten an SEC team once, and it was Mississippi State last year. Now you have Mississippi State at their place. It's going to be a packed environment. Number 12 team in the country is coming to town, and you best believe, regardless of the way that people view Mississippi State nationally, the folks in Starkville, they believe in SEC football. They believe that they are an SEC team, and if you know anything about SEC fans and the football there, they think their football is king. So regardless of them being 15 of 16 in that conference, they expect to win that game because it's the SEC versus the Big 12.
Yeah, and also there's a target on ASU's back because they're a top 12 now team in the country for sure.
Yeah.
Right? There's also a target on their back because ASU beat them last year,
Yeah.
and now it's home, and like you mentioned earlier, it's the blackout game. I think with Mississippi State, like, it's so funny. I'm going to redo my bit from last year.
Oh, God.
Perfect.
It's the perfect opponent for the Arizona State Sun Devils.
It's the perfect week 2 opponent, because we did see last year with Texas Tech Texas State really
Leave it to
the
you
first
to commit to a bit, man. I love it.
I mean, why not? Like Texas State, right, was a tough road game because the environment there was crazy. That was their Super Bowl.
Yeah.
Right? Texas Tech was the first Big 12 road game of the season, and that ended up bringing ASU's loss, which was somewhat self-inflicted on themselves. This team has shown a couple times in the past that when it comes to being in a rowdy opposing environment, it does lead to them not playing their best football.
They don't start quick by any means.
They don't start quick. This is an opportunity to put that to bed, say this was last year's team, and this will probably be one of the rowdiest environments on par with like a Utah that you're going to be on the road for this year, that you'll play this entire season. But it's most likely going to be the worst team paired with that rowdy environment.
Yeah.
Right? So once again, Arizona State's biggest opponent this weekend is who?
Themselves.
It's themselves. And that is why when you have correctable mistakes against NAU, you have a good test, a good challenge on the road in week 2 against a team that is much worse than you. Don't get it wrong. SEC, Big 12, who gives a crap? Mississippi State is a much worse football team than Arizona State.
Yeah.
And like we said, leading up to NAU, and they didn't do, you need to emphatically prove to the nation that it's not even close. And doing that against this SEC team will take away all the worries that people had about you keeping it, again, I'm going to put this in air quotes, close against a Big Sky opponent.
Do you guys remember the scat line last year from the Mississippi State game?
He had almost 200, right? Or no?
That was the game where he had almost broken the school record. I think 262 all-purpose yards. Just rushing yards.
Yeah. Just rush.
33 carries, 262 yards, 3 receptions for 35 yards. But here's the one
Disgusting.
so this game is going to look completely different. Obviously, you don't have scat. Sam Leavitt stat line, go.
Wasn't very good. I think 11 of 22 for $170 maybe.
Yeah, Jordan Tyson didn't do anything that game. I'll say he threw for 120 yards.
Both way too high. 10 of 20 for 69 yards, no touchdowns.
20, 69 yards, no touchdowns. But he had a touchdown on the ground.
2 touchdowns on the ground.
2 touchdowns on the ground.
Funny enough, Cam did not have a single touchdown that game.
Yeah, because it was Sam who punched it in. Yeah, I mean, that was a really fascinating game. Because once again, we talked about, hey, Arizona State. Hey, if you're watching on TV, the party always continues over at gophnx.com. It's time for overtime. We talked about, and we've mentioned it now multiple times this show, about how ASU didn't play like a really full, complete game, and they still found a way to win. You know, a lot of the time last season, that was on heroics, and it was on Cam Scatterby heroics more often than not. This year, you don't want to rely on heroics.
Hero.
But you were able to rely on heroics if you need to. I wonder how these running backs will fare against Mississippi State, considering that's where they got torched last year. Also, Mississippi State doesn't have, I forget the kid's name. My apologies, but they had this really shifty. I think he was number 5, and I think he torched ASU for like over 100 yards in the air, and he had a couple really big plays.
Kevin Coleman, number 3 last year.
Yeah.
He is not on the roster, but they do have a running back named Fluff Bothwell.
That's do.
Awesome.
And they got another guy, David Booth, I think. No relation.
Devon
Booth. No relation to John Wilkes.
That we know of.
Yeah. They got kind of, I'm not going to say a monster, but they've got a 2-headed running back room. They didn't run the ball, I don't think, too effectively against Southern Miss.
Wow.
Did they? They had 3 touchdowns on the ground.
Yeah, they were okay.
But not a ton of yards on the ground.
79 yards for Devon and 43 for Fluff.
On like 15 carries and 13 carries.
Yeah, really important and related. Southern Miss has a receiver named Carl Chester.
I don't know. Did you guys see the Southern Miss coach after the game talking about, because that game was close. That game was close in the first half. I want to say it was tied at one point, like 10-10 or something.
Yeah, at halftime it was 13-10.
And Southern Miss's coach post game was talking about how Mississippi State had spent $15 million in the trenches, defensive line and offensive line, and saying they got their return on investment in the second half of that game. I think this is just, again, and I'm not saying that Mississippi State is going to come out lethargic like they did against Southern Miss, but if you're Arizona State, what better way to just totally drop the narrative, have everybody like forget about what happened last week, than starting off and going on a 14-0 run, fast as hell in SEC country, shut those stupid ass cowbells up, get that fan base to just be like completely taken out of the ball game, and then go to your, I've got Kanye Udo, I've got Raleek Brown, I've got Kyson Brown, run the football, control the middle 8. Like the game plan is pretty clear in this one. Mississippi State is not a team that wants to play a game of who can pack the bigger punch, because they're going to lose against the cream of the crop in the Big 12, the ACC, the SEC, the Big 10. They know that. They're the type of team, based off of how they spent their money in the transfer portal and all the new guys that they have on the roster, because there's a ton of them, it is, we're going to make this a close game. We're going to punch you in the mouth. And at the end of it, when we have a chance, we like Blake Shapen, who has been in this system for a little bit, to go out there and win us this ball game. You're Arizona State. You have superstars offensively. You have a ton of defensive returners. You got to go out and you got to floor it from the jump of this one.
Yeah, there's no excuses, especially because you're not coming off of a week where you won 50-0, right? You're coming off of a week where you got dropped in the AP Top 25 despite winning. Everybody, including your own fan base, is saying that they're disappointed in your week 1 win, and I think rightfully so. You should be disappointed in yourself, and now you are on the road for your true first road test as an AP ranked team this season, right? This is a big deal. Every game for ASU is a big deal because, like Sharon said, like, I think that teams or AP voters or whatever, they're going to be looking for whatever reason to knock Arizona State down a peg.
Agreed.
The Big 12 in general is not respected on the same level as an SEC and as a Big 10. So you're fighting against the Big 12 bias and you're fighting against the Arizona State bias. And the only way that you can beat both of those is to beat the living crap out of Mississippi State. And we'll go through this entire week and tell you exactly how they can do that.
Yeah, Guys, that is going to do it for today's episode of the PHNX Sun Devil Show. Appreciate everybody sticking around from the start to the finish. If you're listening on audio, don't stop running. We appreciate everybody. Make sure you hit that like button. You hit the subscribe button on your way out. What do you got, Deli Man?
No, I can do it as always.
I love it. Well, that is going to do it. So if you enjoyed today's content, give us a follow at PHNX_Sun Devils on social. You can follow me at Anthony_Totri. You can follow the guy wearing the same colored shirt as me. That's Eric Ruby at Eric Ruby, Eric with a K. You can follow the Deli Man at Shane Deef.
Much like ASU football, don't stop running.
Don't stop running.
As always.
And we will see you guys on Wednesday. Same time, same place. In the meantime, go Devils. Peace.
We all silly like the mayor.